Chapter 38, Section 20B, following Governor Baker's declaration of a state of emergency in the Commonwealth arising from the COVID-19 pandemic. The advisory committee will meet virtually utilizing Zoom technology. All votes will be taken by roll call, and the meeting will be recorded. So we're going to call the meeting to order and call the roll. Fran Collins.
Present.
Jean Healy.
Present.
Lee Jenkins.
Present.
Helene Lieb.
Present.
Mary McGoldrick.
Present.
Meg Wheeler. She's
Present.
Here. Awesome. And Rob Hillman, I am here. So the first agenda items are budget reviews. We have the DPW, the police department, and IT in that order. So, I think we've been trying to get this message through the various departments. We're happy to have you. We want to hear what you think is important. But we really are looking for a snapshot of your department's, how your department's budget fits into the overall budget. And really it's the things that are the most interesting to us, and anybody on the committee can feel free to ask additional questions, of course, but are the bottom line or the top line, depending on how you do it, and the factors within the budget that kind of move that needle one way or the other. So there's no need to kind of go line by line with us. If people have questions about line items, we've been given a pretty solid amount of information for everybody's budget. So I'm sure people will have looked at that or have questions about individual items. Does anybody on the committee have any other observations about how to sort of generally go about this, or did I get it right? Okay, having a thumbs up from the vice chair, we'll turn to the DPW. So who wants to get that started, and what documents we should be looking at?
I'll start off, unless John, do you have anything you want to open with?
No. So as everybody was CC'd on the emails I sent to Rob and Mary with all the information, I mean, really it's just a snapshot that we started doing last year, which we've seen before, taking a look at last year's and this year's budget, the goals and objectives, and then any capital items. So as Rob mentioned, everybody has received that, and I'm assuming has looked at it. So everybody has that line item information. It sounds like the most efficient way is kind of just to give the general overview, maybe some key points that you think and the other groups think are important or will be important, and then they can ask questions and then kind of go from there. I think that might be the most effective way to do that.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen, and basically I just made a presentation with those snapshots of the budget.
So just from a technical point of view, here is the AV guy. So Rob, you now are co-host. You can turn people's microphones on and off if you feel the need. And Brian, you have screen sharing authority. Okay.
Is everybody, I guess, looking at the title screen here? Okay.
We are.
So good evening, everyone. Brian Joyce, DPW Director, Town Engineer. We're going to be going over the DPW facilities budget tonight for my part of the evening. So just a quick overview on the coding of the budgets in the DPW facilities. So we have 422, which is a highway, tree and park. 423 is snow and ice. 424 is the street lights. 425 is the RTF. And 426 encompasses facilities, and the suffixes on the end of each line is associated with a building, town hall through the rec center. And to Rob's point, the factors that move the needle, basically our overall budget is a level service budget with minor increases due to contractual obligations and salaries. So that's kind of the general overall, synopsis. So we'll go through 422 first. This is DPW. We're proposing a 1.574 budget. It's a 7.2% increase due to a couple of lines that have moved around, and again the union contractual obligations. Prior year accomplishments. Again, this is not everything, but just kind of a snapshot. We did the town common project. We're moving along with our NIPD's permit, which is National Pollution Discharge Elimination, and we're going to continue with that this summer with mapping all of our outfalls and seeing where our stormwater goes, and then ultimately kind of taking further steps to clean up sources of pollution or things in our stormwater. A big part of everyone's budget has been COVID support. For DPW's part, we've done all the kind of a mounting and of signage around town. Michelle Leary's done all the procurements for masks, everything from masks to shields and everything that goes with COVID. We've put out a few contracts, been awarded a few contracts. One I'm particularly eager to start using is a Shawcrete contract for seawalls and abutments and concrete repairs. Engineering architectural services. We put in charging stations. Michelle is going through solar projects right now for roofs and with the AEC. And we procured everything from paper to vehicles. We've completed the Green Communities projects, which this past year, this is grant funding. This past year included charging stations, the electrical vehicle charging stations, lighting upgrades, and there was one other small item on that. Goals for next year: we're going to continue with our road maintenance and paving plan. We're on a 20-year cycle for our roads. We try to do 1.5 miles to 2 miles a year to get each road paved within that 20-year cycle. And we have a road protection plan for the first 10 years of pavement, with a 5-year strict moratorium and then fees from years 6 to 10. We have RTF upgrades planned. Another big thing for the DPW site is a salt shed replacement. We'll go into that a little bit later. The rain garden improvements, veteran memorial improvements. Veteran memorials are kind of been, they're created, but they've been ignored somewhat. So we now have a budget line, thanks to Don and the veterans agent, to do some important upgrades there. We're doing some cemetery upgrades, and we'll continue with grant applications and contract awards. Capital request under 422. We have replacing our older stand-up ride mowers. We're also looking for a new unit, a slope mower to handle the slopes that we have in town, particularly in front of the schools and behind the schools. We've actually, in the past years, we've seized some ride-on mowers because the angle of the slopes are so steep that you lose the oil from the engine pan, and it does damage, and it's also extremely unsafe. When it's a hazard if you could tip the mower or become injured. We're looking for a chipper replacement for our brush days and storm cleanup. Bucket truck is a new thing. We have an increasing amount of tree work, and we're using contractors for a lot of bucket truck work that we could do in-house because we don't have such a unit. And the big ticket is our salt shed. The current salt shed is 1985 vintage, and it only holds 400 tons. And if we have a week of back-to-back storms, say 3 or 4 storms in a row, we get dangerously close to emptying the salt shed, and we start rationing, which is not great for road safety, our salt while we're waiting for the next delivery. So we're proposing a bigger shed which would help us, get ready for next deliveries without having to ration the road treatment. Our next budget is 423, which covers our snow and ice. This particular budget is unique in that we're allowed to overspend as needed under Mass General Law. So this is a pretty level service, or a level budget at 125 each year. The one increase in this is for meals related to the DPW union contract, and again, that's just when the guys are in for a long overnight or 16, 18 hours, is they need nourishment, and it's a lot of times when there's nothing open. So that's what that extra budget line is for. And again, the salt shed, you can see at the top of the page, that's our existing salt shed from 1985. It's gone through its useful life. And on a blue sky, windy day, we had a piece of the roof rip off this year, and we had to go up there. I was up there with Nick Barati, who's on the call with us, and the purlins are just so that hold that the roof is screwed to. They're just so rotten that we ended up replacing a lot of the purlins and put some new sheathing on there. But it's that structure is ready for replacement. So we're proposing to capital budget two options. One you can see in the bottom right. It's a canvas building with an arch shape, and the other one is the typical gambrel wooden frame storage building. And we're going from 400 tons to 2,000, which will buy us needed time to get through. It'll give us a month of storage. That's with consistent storms. Just for reference, we generally place about 6,000 tons on our roads each year, on average. 424 is streetlights. This is, it is what it is. It pays for our streetlights. We have a maintenance contract with Dale Electric, who does the operation and maintenance of our streetlights, and it pays for our electrical bills. So this is zero change in this one. The RTF, we are proposing a 2.3% increase in this. Prior year accomplishments, obviously the big one was we stayed open through the pandemic with some modifications on how we handle and receive recycling materials. And a big thanks to the public for going along with those changes. I know it's been difficult. We obtained an RDP grant for a paper compactor. We hosted a regional household hazardous waste collection day, which was had extra challenges with COVID. We increased security and enforcement of the regulations and infractions. I hope the public is noticing that the blue bag volume is up significantly from where it has been historically. So we're getting a lot better compliance with our pay-as-you-throw bag, which subsidizes getting rid of our trash. Goals for the upcoming year: we're going to purchase the paper compactor once we receive the funding. Continue to monitor recycling markets and negotiate the best contracts we can for disposal of our materials. The guard booth that's been out there, we haven't been able to staff it because currently we are down 2 staff members right now, one due to injury and we have another vacancy. So we're hiring a new employee. We've had an interview this week and we hope to have that filled shortly. That'll help us with, again, staffing that booth and bringing a sticker and pay-as-you-throw bags and better compliance. We'll continue to meet OSHA compliance rules and regs, where all cities and towns are now under OSHA. This is a new development in the past year. So we're working through, upgrades to railing systems, fall protection, things of that nature. This increase in the budget, it's a level service budget, and it's mainly due to salary increases. Anticipated capital requests are a new compactor baler, and renovate and do some re-siding on the older RTF buildings up there. 426 is facilities, and this is the department that Nick Berardi is soon to be our new facilities director. We're proposing a $1.12 million budget. It's a 3.7% increase. Prior year accomplishments, we had a lot of school security upgrades with lobby guards and bulletproof receiving windows, and treatment of window surfaces for shatterproofing them. Several sidewalks have been replaced around the high school, and there's more planned for this year. Window repairs, lighting upgrades, flooring projects. Took advantage of the one thing that COVID gave us, empty buildings. So we were able to do some work there. Townwide roof assessment, that was an important thing that Nick spearheaded, and it's actually led us to a decision to do a roof care plan, which is in the goals. We've installed 5 water bottle filling stations in the high school, and obviously COVID support. Again, all the glass and partitions, hand sanitizers, everything COVID related has been mounted by Nick and his staff in the schools and elsewhere. We also hired a new employee who has HVAC and electrical technical skills, which is a great new addition to our facility staff. It's a skill set that we haven't had in the department. We've had to contract all HVAC things out. Goals for upcoming year: the sprinkler upgrades, the roof care plan, which is what the roof care plan does is we have a contractor comes in and will do 2 inspections per year and do repairs of any kind of little leaks that could potentially turn into bigger leaks. So it's a 3-year plan, and it includes, we have 254,000 square feet of rubber membrane roof on our buildings. That's just under 7 acres. So it's a lot of area to cover, and this roof care plan will help keep those roofs in good shape so that we don't have any big mishaps, and it's more of a proactive approach than reactive when leaks occur. The biggest thing this year is a transition to a facilities director. Mark Kelly is leaving us after 30 plus years of service to the town. So a big thank you to Mark Kelly for maintaining our buildings and working through the transition to Nick Berardi, who has been our assistant facilities director. He's going to be the new facilities director, and Nick's replacement is Nadeem Nahas, who is the skilled person with HVAC and electrical. He came from the town of Plymouth facilities. Let's see. We also have the gym ventilation upgrades on the roof of the gym. Those are probably the biggest ventilator units we have in town. And there's a myriad of ongoing facility maintenance projects. So with that, that concludes the budgets that I'm going through. So thank you for consideration of the budgets, and I'll take any questions that anybody has on overall or just particular lines.
Thanks, Brian. I think I'd like to, as we go through these budgets, sort of let the committee liaison to the department, take the lead or at least pole position. So, Lee, I know this is always an area in which you're particularly interested. Why don't you jump in?
I'll ask some questions to Brian. These are maybe trivia, but I just had a chance to skim over the budget, and like we have in the DPW, we have rubbish removal. Why do we have a rubbish removal in the DPW? The facility's right up on the hill. Any idea? That's all right.
So we take care of all the trash cans around town, Sandy Beach, the harbor, the public cans, and that would support the yellow bags and any kind of, when we do the cleanup, which is going to happen in the next month, of Sandy Beach, we have to we get a dumpster. We usually screen the sand before we leave. It goes back on the beach and get rid of that trash. So this would handle things like that.
Another one is what's the contract manager? Who's that?
Michelle Leary is our procurement and contracts manager. She's Chris can help me. She has a license. What's the license she has, John?
She's a certified public procurement officer, a CPPO.
Thank you.
And she also works with Brian on a host of other contracts that they manage, including overseeing, helping with water and sewer operations and with all the facilities and all the contracts that they manage with their vendors.
It couldn't be $85,000 for DPW. Come on. It couldn't be. It should be split with somebody else.
Well, I mean, all of. Sometimes it's easier to house an employee solely in a department, even if they don't support that department 100%.
Yeah, right. Michelle does all of our contracts and contracts for the town, right? So.
Right. Okay. Okay. Just so everybody knows that the lighting is 55,000. Used to be 85,000. So in theory, we're saving $30,000 a year by owning the lights. I mean, took a long time to get that thing done, but we got it done. Okay. One other thing, Brian, you may not know this. I saw Hadley over at the whatever it is over by the Red Lion Inn, that little building we have, the old maintenance, the old DPW building. It looked like there was a toilet in the back of the Hadley truck. Did they replace a toilet over there, Hadley?
I don't know. Nick Berardi, are you on the call? Would you guys replace a toilet?
I'm not sure that's one of those factors that's going to be driving our $50 million budget for next year, but do your thing.
I'm just saying that's $65,000 for one employee. I don't know. It doesn't.
That's a reasonable question. The toilet replacement.
These are the questions I have, and I just saw this recently and just reminded me that Hadley was there for the toilet. But the only reason it drives the budget is that you have employees. If it was from our facility, we have employees that can do that work. Now we just hired an electrician for them, and they were, I think it was like $15,000 or $20,000 for electrical services before, outside labor. When we have our own maintenance department, which now I guess we have electrician. I'm just bringing up these things.
Yeah, I saw an item for hiring skilled employees, which I assume means licensed trades like electricians. Was that were those new hires or replacement hires with who were more qualified?
So it was in anticipation of Mark Kelly's retirement. So Mark is leaving, Nick is transitioning up, and it'd be the void left by Nick. And just to be clear, he has an HVAC license and electrical. He's not a licensed electrician, but he does, he'll do electrical, technical troubleshooting and things like that.
Okay. Now, does anybody? I've got a couple of questions, but I should go last. Does anybody else have anything specifically? I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you done?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Anybody else? Going back to your initial slide, the snapshot document that you put up had change of $105,000 or 7.2% overall. Could you just talk about the factors that, some of that's going to be changes in, escalators and collective bargaining agreements, but I can't, I just was wondering where the rest of that 7.2% comes from.
Sure.
I will just for a second, Rob, most of that is related to personnel costs. So they have not only just, we're estimating a COLA for next year, but also we factor in the steps that are related to that. Now the steps are, the majority of the steps are basically held in the town manager's budget. So we've basically brought everybody up to an estimated 2% COLA. And then there's also changes during the year that maybe somebody may have moved through a different grade or a step, or some people aren't in the union, so their salary change might be a little bit different than just 2%. But when you go through the line items, there aren't, the majority of the changes are personnel. 1% off the top relates to the Veterans Memorial that Brian mentioned. Now that's not really an addition to the overall town budget. Last year, we started implementing this budget line item in the veterans budget, but really DPW would be handling all of this work, calling the right contractors. So we made that decision in conjunction with discussion with Phil Mahoney to bring that $15,000 underneath the DPW budget. So right off the top, 1% comes off as, the true increase, I guess, would be 6.2.
Okay, so presumably that 1% that moved into the DPW budget moved out of a budget someplace else. So that's exactly a wash. Did I get that right?
Yeah,
wow.
Correct.
But okay, 6.2%. If the ATVs in the contract, the union contracts, they can't be more than 2%. I doubt that they're more than 2%.
Now,
they can be.
The other thing, Rod, and again, it could be also a timing issue from when we're doing the salary projections for the budget, depending on, a lot of times we'll take, where they're at now while we're doing the budget and plan what their next year's COLA is going to be, right? Now, depending on the time of a review of when the next year's salary change is made, we may be factoring in maybe 2 years. I don't know if I'm explaining it that well, but
you can explain it really, really well, and I'll still not fully understand it. So I'll take it. I think
basically it could just be a catch-up. It could be a catch-up from the prior year budget calculation that I'm trying to bring them. By the time we're coming to town meeting preparing these budgets, I'm trying to get them as close, as accurate as we are right now, and then add in a 2% or an estimated COLA for the next year. So some of that could just be the gross up of maybe a prior year. Maybe we didn't have a budget where it should have been. Now I'm factoring in the correct salary at the correct step and all of that.
Okay, I don't want to drag this out. And I see Fran's hand is up. So,
I'll just add quickly to answer. OSHA compliance budget line went up. We have we buy part of the union contract jackets every 2 years, so we have the jacket purchase coming up. So it's moderate increases. Our seawall maintenance line went up a little bit.
And if I could just add, Rob, there was actually a decrease from 20 to 21, and then it went back up in 22. So I think it was a personnel thing. I think we had some people that moved that came in at we had people that moved around within the department to different, and what's happened is some of them have skilled back up. With our bonuses in the contract for getting skill levels, I know we had at least one employee move up the ladder, which was good for us. He's now able to do a lot more work. So we're actually not that much higher than we were 2 years ago.
Okay. Well, I think I don't, like I said, I don't want to drag this out. I conceive it as our committee's charge to look and make sure that, we don't have pieces of the budget growing at 7% a year without at least asking good questions, and we can get good answers. Fran, I'm sorry, I keep talking and you should.
That's all right. That's all right. You've got important things to say. I have a question about a bucket truck. Situate has a bucket truck. Hingham has one. I don't know if Hull has one, but every little town around here has to have an expensive $95,000 bucket truck, street sweeper, call it what you will. And I wonder if there's been any investigation as to terms as for sharing them with these various towns. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to have a truck that you're going to use. Maybe you're going to get what, 20, 30 hours out of it a year. That's an awful big expense to have it sitting parked up at the town barn. Has anybody looked at that as far as sharing with the other towns?
So in particular, the bucket truck, we've looked at some of the other equipment, sanders, sweepers, not sanders, sweepers. The bucket truck, and like most pieces of equipment, when you need it, you need it. I mean, we have, as of, I want to say January, we spent $56,000 of a $40,000 tree budget, hazardous tree budget, because that's a contractor. It's 70% of the contract work that they do is on bucket trucks, and it's really just limbing things, up in the upper canopy that we can't get to. Right now, we can only cut what we can cut from the ground with a pole saw. Even ladder work, by OSHA standards, is with a chainsaw. It's not safe.
No, I understand that, Brian. But during the course of the year, when you're trimming odds and ends, trimming some of the upper story, you're clearing out. And I assume that most of the wire clearing is done by the electric light company or the telephone company. But other work that we have to do does not require the truck all the time. Now, in the event of a storm, a hurricane, or a major snowstorm, something with lots of trees down, obviously you're going to have to hire outside people to help you, same as we hire outside people to plow snow. So I'm just wondering if we thought about having a joint venture, if you will, with the other towns to share some of these pieces of expensive capital equipment.
Well, we haven't looked at it hard. We've other than initial discussions, but it's one of those things that it's a high liability piece of equipment, and sharing and insurance. I think this one particular piece of equipment, even though it's under the DPW capital request, it's a facilities request as well. That roof that I showed you the picture of on the salt shed, Nick Berardi probably 5 times a year has to rent a lift to do, whether it's roof inspections or things at elevated roof. We had to run Cat 5 from poles to do the cameras at the RTF. All of the street lights that are in the parking areas are behind the meter, and we own them. They're not a national grid service. So all that kind of elevated work that facilities does, and then DPW tree and park particularly, that's what this unit would help cover.
But that's scheduled work. I mean, so you can schedule that work to, anyway, I don't want to get in a great long discussion, but I think that we should be looking at doing some sharing with some of the other towns. It doesn't make sense to spend a whole lot of money on a big piece of capital equipment that gets very little use.
The biggest problem also, who's licensed to operate that machine? And what kind of liabilities does the town have when somebody's up in that bucket truck?
So we have licensed staff on DPW, and we have Nick Berardi is licensed to operate a lift. Training would come with the purchase of the unit. It's not the request we had a few years ago. It was a $150,000 bucket truck. This is a vehicle-mounted 35-foot bucket truck that could handle the items that we need to get to at elevation.
Okay. Anybody else?
One more question, Brian.
Go right ahead.
Landfill monitoring. Have you yourself personally looked at that landfill monitoring? I know it's required for closing the dump, but isn't the effluent going in one direction? Can't you work with the state and say, can we only do so much of the monitoring? Why do we have to do the whole field all the time?
Yeah, it's a law. The DEP mandates it that we do testing of groundwater and gas.
I understand that, Brian. Brian, I understand that. But the trouble is that if I remember properly, the effluent is heading in one direction and it's not heading the other, and we're testing in the other. I think if you got the DPW down here and they can make corrections, it would cut our costs. I may be wrong, but I believe it would cut our costs. But you have to be tough for the DEP.
Yeah, I haven't asked that question. I'll ask him. I know it heads basically in a northward, northeasterly direction.
That's correct.
You know, away from the RTF. But it's, you know, the well points are all around the perimeter. The gas points are all around the perimeter, and the cap is really everything that you're looking at there too. So we're just following the law, but I can talk to DEP to see if we can get any relief on testing requirements, but it's something we're going to need to do in perpetuity. And we did price out sampling with other engineering firms a few years ago, and it was I've had samples around $40,000, and we were able to get them down to a $25,000 contract with a multi-year contract. So it's competitive. It's just
oh, it's not the fee I'm saying. I'm just saying they're testing too much of the other areas that aren't being affected, since it's going in one direction, or, you know, northerly, whatever it is, direction. Why should we be testing the southerly direction when it's going in a northerly direction? That's the only thing I'm getting at.
Yeah, I'll ask the question.
Okay.
There.
We have a couple of minutes left before Chief Quigley. Does anybody else have anything else? Jean, I saw your hand.
Hi, Brian. I just had a quick question about the roof maintenance plan, and I realized that the AEC was talking with us earlier about solar panels. I was wondering if there was any convergence between the roof maintenance plan that you guys are looking at and what they're doing on that front in terms of what you expect over the next year's goals. Yeah,
so I mean, facilities and you know, we've been in contact with AEC. Michelle Leary, who's in our department, is their liaison, and she's at a meeting, I think, currently right now with them. The roof protection plan is basically a maintenance plan. It's you know, we're not doing any work related to solar panels. Our roofs are generally 20 plus years old, and they're warranted for 20 years, but the sheets will last about 30 years. It's really the joints that fail. So this will get us, I think, another, you know, hopefully another decade on our bigger rubber membrane roofs. And when and if we decide to pull the trigger on doing a solar project, we look at, should we, what's the condition of the roof in that area, and should we replace the roof in that area before we put the panels on?
Yeah, I know they're talking about at the high school and middle school, if I recall correctly, but the issue was the changed assumptions about the longevity of the roof and whether it made sense in the near future to do that. So I wasn't sure if there was a reassessment on your part, but it sounds like there's still maybe not, you know, the timing may be a little bit off there.
Yeah, right. The roofs have a little bit more life in them. They're not ready for replacement right now. And if we decide to do a solar project, we just need to make that decision. Do we do a one-time removal of the panels to do a roof replacement? And that's generally what I think Michelle has put into the bids. And I think it may have been priced both ways: a one-time removal or you know, just replacing the roof up front.
Helene, you're muted.
Muted. You're muted.
You're muted. Thank you.
You're muted.
There. There, Brian. Brian, my knowledge about the school roofs is that we're going to get state help. You know, if indeed we have, there's certain a number of years that we have to wait in terms of the longevity of the roof. It used to be 20, and I think now it's a little longer. So is that part of your plan to, you know, to keep that in mind so we can get some state aid?
That's a good point. I think they increased it to 25 years.
Yeah, that's my understanding. So I just want to make sure that's in your plan, your you know, 5-10 year plan. Yeah,
the capital, the big capital items at the schools are the boilers, the roofs, and really those are the real two big ticket items, and windows, I guess, if you want to do window replacements. and we're looking at the ages of those and doing that. I forget the name of the program, but the mass school program where they'll replace those units.
Because I'm not positive exactly what the year is on the high school roof. I think it's going on 20 years.
Yeah, you're correct. It's 20 years this year.
Exactly. So just having it in your plan that 5 years from now, we're up in the front of the line.
Okay. We're past time, but if anybody has anything further for DPW, hearing nothing. Brian, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, everybody.
I see Chief Quigley. Now I see Chief Quigley. Excellent. Good evening, Chief. Thanks for joining us. I think you were on the line at the beginning of the meeting, when I said kind of outlined what we're interested in hearing. You've done this more than I have. So, please feel free to point out the things that you think are important for us to know about, and also the the matters that drive the budget, both up or down. Down is fine. It's all perfectly okay. Take it away.
Sure. Can you give me the ability to share my screen?
Not me, but somebody here can.
Let's see here.
Chris has got it.
Got it. You get that?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Let me see where everybody's picture went. You're over here. Let me just move you back to where I can see you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and Co-Chair and Meg, for guiding me through this. I'm sorry I couldn't make the last meeting. I'm sure Chief Sylvia kept you busy. So I just have I think 4 or 5 slides that I put together for a quick presentation, a high-level presentation on the police budget, and again, our goals are to have a safe and secure town, with open communications, a professional department with great quality of life, and we always strive to be fair, responsive, and practice impartial policing. The budget this year, we were directed to do a level service budget, and that's what I'll present tonight. Level service budget means to us that there's a $92,437 change in the budget up, and that's about 3% of the overall budget. Fiscal 21, you can see at the top, was $2.78 million. The 22 request is going to be 2.87 million. And the drivers of the increase, you can see at the bottom here, with shift changes, step increases, promotion, and obtaining advanced degrees by officers in the department. Everything is relatively flat. The town manager and personnel and I, we entered into a 1-year extension of the both police contracts as a police patrol contract, and also one for the superiors. And those which I believe they were just ratified. The patrol one definitely was. The ranking officers are about to ratify, I believe. They already haven't. And again, that was a 2% COLA raise, and that's the big driver of this. And that was a 2% across the board, basically COLA raise. And as you can see, personnel accounts for about 66, 67% of the budget, and everything else is pretty well fixed. The expenses remain the same. Shrek Dispatch, we contract that out through the regional dispatch center in Hingham. They take care of Hingham, Norwell, Hull, and Cohasset, and that was relatively flat as well. 21 was $377,000. This year's about $375,000. So it actually went down a little bit. Expect that to go up next year because our calls are up for this last calendar year, approximately 40%. And I'll show you another slide. And overtime is another. We budget $375,000, and we did that again this year. And we basically do that as a placeholder. There hasn't been a year that I've been here that we've been able to meet that number. We don't have the proper staffing
to reduce that number, we'd have to add full-time employees to the department. And that's something we looked at, we studied over the years. The last time was 2013 or 2000. I think it was 2013. We had the select board appointed a committee to look into police and fire overtime, and basically the determination was it's cheaper to pay the overtime than add full-time employees. The organizational chart of the police department. This is it. We have a two lieutenant model. So there's myself. There's two lieutenants. There's Lieutenant Lennon, who's on the call tonight. He's the executive officer of the department. He's the administrative lieutenant, and Lieutenant Lopes off to the right. There's the operations lieutenant, and also the CID commander, the detective commander. Each shift, there's 4 shifts. There's the day shift, the evening shift, the midnight shift, and then there's a relief shift. There's a sergeant in charge of each one of those. So the patrol force accounts for 9. There's 9 patrol officers and 4 sergeants. So there's 13 officers, 13 officers that are out in the marked cars, that are handling the calls for service and staffing the shifts. We have a reserve officer force of 12 officers, and those officers are generally used in the summertime to augment our increase in calls. So, the key number is 13 officers in patrol. And if you look at our personnel versus our calls for service, personnel, the FTEs have remained constant for the last several years. There's 19 total on the department. That includes me. And remember back to that 13 number, there's 13 people in patrol. So the other, besides this 13, you have the administrative staff, school resource, and detectives that, these folks, including myself, are not out on patrol. So those 13 officers answering the calls for service have answered, in 2020, we're 10,787 calls. That's up from 7,132 in 2019, which is a huge increase this past year. This goes to overtime. So we man, there's 3 officers per shift, and there's 3 shifts per day. So if you do the math, simple math, there's 13 officers in patrol that are handling these calls for service in the black and white cars. Each officer works 4 days on, followed by 2 days off. So officers work 21 days a month out of an average of a 30-day month. The union contracts, the safe manning clause in the contract is there'll be 3 officers per shift on duty. So that's 3 officers times 3 shifts a day. There's 63 shifts in a week. So 9 officers a day times 30 days. That brings you to 270 shifts, 8-hour shifts to be filled per month, right? 270 8-hour shifts to be filled per month. And out of those 270 shifts, we have those 13 people fill 273 of them. So we're operating without a cushion for training, sick, or accrued time off. So anytime anyone takes any time off, it requires overtime to replace them. These are officers out on patrol. So if someone calls in sick for the evening shift tonight, we have to replace that officer with overtime. So the problem is the rub is that we have known time off. We know how much time off per the contract people get. So training days, which is mandated by the state, we know that there's 230 training days for all our personnel. If you add up all their vacation days, and again, this is a known, it's spelled out in the contract. These officers receive 357 days off a year. Average sick and FMLA time is 112 days a year, and personal days per the contract are 45 days a year. So at the end of the year, we have a minimum liability, a known liability of 744 days. If you look right in the middle here, so that's almost 6,000 hours times the average OT rate. So before we do anything, before there's a major emergency or if we have to call people in, we know we're spending at least $414,000. So we're budgeted $375. The known overtime is almost $15,000. So we're already underwater before we start. So that's something that we've talked about, and I've talked to Dawn about, and we either add people or we continue to pay the overtime, and the way it's been is it's been a policy. It's been a policy decision just to pay the overtime because it's cheaper than paying the benefits. So that's why overtime is usually more than is budgeted. We know before we go into it that we're out of money before we start. That's just a real high level view of the drivers of overtime and the staffing of the department. I can get down into the nitty gritty as much as you want, but I'll open it up for any questions that anybody has.
So thank you, Chief. Before we go to questions, are there any non-labor cost expense lines that are worth remarking on?
Training, we level funded training, but there's a lot of unknowns right now as far as training goes with the police reform bill that passed back towards the beginning of the year. The state is still trying to figure this out, as am I. There's going to be a lot of additional training that's needed for officers, and we haven't budgeted for it, and we're not sure if the state is going to help us out with any type of grant or anything like that. So that's sort of an unknown right now, and it's literally shaking out as we speak.
Okay. Why don't I turn it over to Meg if you want to get started with any particulars?
Sure. Chief, thank you very much for the presentation. I just have a couple of questions. You mentioned a couple of times that I think you said back in 2013, we did look at the analysis of whether it made more sense to hire versus do overtime. Does that, do you think that warrants revisiting, or does that still feel like an appropriate decision?
It's a double-edged sword. I think there's got to be some middle ground here. I think there's somewhere in between where we could end at. But it is busier, it is more complex, and quite frankly, officers are off the road more, writing reports and notifying DCF and everything else. It's become much more complex. So additional staffing would be good. We're hoping that some money federally gets freed up for to add some grants. There's been some in the past. We haven't seen them in a while. We're hoping they come back. So that would definitely be an avenue to explore.
Okay. And this may be a question for Don, not you, I'm not sure, but if we already know from the start that we're going to go over on our overtime, why are we not budgeting for that number at a minimum?
It was a policy decision, and we sort of, we catch up on it, around this time of year in adjustments.
Okay. Two more questions, hopefully quick. Just out of curiosity, why the increase in the number of calls? Is that pandemic related, or is this something else?
There were just a lot of people at home, for last year. Just more people around town. We didn't have as many, car crashes, for example, but neighborhood disputes around mental health calls, medical calls, things like that. A ton of fraud, bank fraud, internet fraud, a ton of those types of calls. And those are complex. It's not just take a report and you have to try to call banks, and you're calling credit companies and everything else. So some of these things for a regular patrol officer, that takes an officer off the road for up to 2 hours. So.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I think we all probably know that the mental health issues are not going to go away. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Last question, I promise, and everyone else can go. You and I had a chat a couple of years ago about all electric vehicles. I'm sure that has not been top of mind this past year, but I'm just curious what the status is on those being an option for police departments.
So we have one, right? It's not all electric, it's a hybrid, and it's actually really working well. It's the vehicle that I have. I was sort of the guinea pig on this, and we've ordered, we've requested through Capital 2 additional for the marked fleet for July 1st. But it's really, I was hesitant. I didn't know if it would run all the radios and the lights and all that stuff, but it's really worked wonderfully. And the regular, patrol cars you see around town, they get about, anywhere from 10 to 12 miles per gallon. The one that I'm driving, the hybrid, is getting 22 to 24 miles per gallon. And it's pretty cool. You're driving down North Main Street, you're at, whatever, 35 miles an hour, and the tachometer just goes right to zero when the vehicle's on battery.
Yeah.
You're not missing any power. It performs just as well. And it's, we have a Jeep as a personal car. And the thing drives me crazy. When I get to a stoplight, it shuts off, and then you take your foot off the brake and it starts back up. And it's really annoying. But these don't do that for some reason. They've figured it out. So it's, I have no complaints, and I'd like to get the whole fleet changed over.
Great, thank you.
Right. Okay, I saw Helene first, then Mary, then Fran.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes. Hi, Chief. I really appreciate the training that you're giving your staff in de-escalation, especially in mental health. And I was wondering if you have any stats about repetitive calls, and are you using Interface referral line that our town is paying for to help people in terms of, getting help so they're not constantly calling the police?
Yeah, because a lot of these problems, they're just not, they call us because we're open 24 hours a day.
Exactly.
And, some of this really isn't appropriate for us to handle. And we've identified a bunch of people. We have a task force right now, and Lieutenant Lopes can probably speak to this, that we work with Elder Affairs, and they've hired a social worker.
Yes, yes, they have hired. It's money coming from the Social Service League, which I'm on the board of.
She's really wonderful, and
right.
She's helped us out immensely over the past 3 or 4 months, and she's going to continue on. We're chasing a grant right now to fund her position, so she can help sort of piecemeal or part time with different. We know we have some frequent fires that it's really not it's more of a mental health issue than a police issue.
Yes. And
we bring it as far as we can. But then there's just not a lot we can do. We can ship it to the hospital, but it's a revolving door at the hospital. They need someone to really get involved in their case. So, maybe Mike can talk to what Stephanie's been doing with some of the cases we've had. It's just, I can't say enough about, how well it's worked out.
Totally. And if you need some help on the South Shore, I'm the coalition director of vice president of 200 therapists, and also connected with South Shore Hospital. So just let me know, Mike, feel free to call me up. But I do think it would be great if the social worker, you can get a grant. But in the meantime, most police departments that I'm aware of, and us psychologists across the state, are seeing during COVID, a humongous increase of police being involved in mental health issues. So whatever you could do to get the grant, but in the meantime, in utilizing our present one, she's stretched thin. I mean, she's only contracted out for, I think, 20 hours, and we're paying for it. This league of, there's 6 women and 1 man, I believe, and that's it. Mary Hooper, she left this foundation, and so that's how come we do it. But so let me know if I can help in any way.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Cut down on those mental health calls. That would be great. More important than the money is getting them services. I've tried to help you guys out with children, but it's just hard.
Well, I mean, I've seen you at the police station at 10 at night picking up kids. So
yeah, and I don't mind doing that on occasion. I'm just one person. So I think until DCF gets involved, these kids are terrorized. So I don't mind doing that on a volunteer basis. So anyway, we could talk later. I don't want to take up any more time. Thank you.
Okay, great. Mary, I think you and then Fran, if I remember correctly.
Chief, thank you for the overtime slides. That was helpful just to understand the nuts and bolts of that a little bit. Just have a basic question. The budget, the snapshot that we received is a little different than the numbers that you shared. And I don't know if Dawn, there's probably a really logical reason for that, but
I think it was only like $3,000. And I think I have it in my notes at the office.
Okay, so it's just not a big deal. I just wanted I figured it was a little thing that we didn't need or got taken out or whatever. I just had. quick question.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember. I have it written down somewhere. I noticed that when I looked at the packet that Chief sent me a while ago, but I just went with the larger number just in case.
Okay, so, but the ask seems to be a little bit less, which is great. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. I think Fran and then Jean.
Chief, you said you have 3 people on patrol on each shift. Does that include the sergeant?
Yes.
So you got 2 people, you got 3 people in a car or 2 people in a whatever. All right. So, but so it's 2 patrolmen and 1 sergeant per shift. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, Jean.
Hi, Chief. Thanks for the. Hi. I just had a quick question about overtime and staffing and how it related to the differing type of calls that you're starting to see more of, specifically on the bank fraud side. I know just from doing this on the federal level in terms of the enforcement work I do, that it is harder, it's more complicated, more time consuming, whether it's identity theft, bank fraud, particularly scams involving elders. And so I'm wondering your opinion in terms of whether there would be any cost savings in terms of hiring someone that maybe had some specialties and could help handle those types of cases, you know, more routinely and sort of built up an expertise in that. If there would be any cost savings in doing that in the sort of policy debate between overtime or, you know, hiring more full-time. I'm not sure if you have a thought on that, or maybe you have someone who does that right now.
No, it's a good point. So what happens generally is, you know, people will call in with, you know, to report, you know, like unemployment fraud was a big one this year. Even town employees, we had, you know, myself included, the fire chief, a couple of other officers, you know, claimed unemployment benefits in our names. So we had over 100 of them from town, you know, school teachers, town hall staff. So the, you know, a report has to be generated for each one. And depending on the amount of loss, or if there's a loss, it gets referred to the detectives. So some of it, you know, depending on the amount, it requires follow-up. We have thresholds for, you know, if it's only a couple $100, we'll do the report and, you know, show you how to notify the credit bureaus. But if you're on thousands, which we've had a few of those, you know, big numbers in the thousands, the detectives have to follow up. But, you know, there is room for like an analyst or you know, so you know, it would make sense to civilianize some of these positions. So, you know, the officers can do what they're supposed to be doing out on the road.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Lee.
Chief, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I was just curious.
You wouldn't do that.
How many cruisers or vehicles you have compared with the number of employees you have?
Oh, I think off the top of my head, I think we have 13 vehicles. There is 5 frontline cars. The rest are either unmarked or you know, spares, mechanical spares.
So if you have 13, how many employees do you have that would drive those vehicles?
19.
19. So we're talking 6 additional vehicles where, in theory, like the state police has done many years ago, they took and everybody has an individual car. Now that's a philosophy change and probably a little more expensive, but I think we get more life out of the vehicles if everybody had their own car. That's how I'm looking at it. Not at the present time, not with our budgets, but I'm just saying it's something to think about.
All right. Who kidnapped Lee?
Yeah.
Anyone else? Did I miss a hand? I had a couple of things. I just, in terms of the overtime number, you know, I think that, you know, it's a big number, so it bears looking at. It appears that it gets looked at every year, and every year, you know, capable people apply math and decide that, you know, it's the, you know, 6,000 hours is 3+ FTEs, which is pretty hefty. But as you point out, you don't have to pay an overtime hour a pension, so or healthcare or other benefits. So I guess what I wonder is that, you know, what body is doing that analysis and making that decision? Don, does that involve you?
It was, yeah, actually before Don was here, and actually before Chris. I think it was done under one of the boards, under Mike Milanowski, and it was the Blue Ribbon committee was George Shamalad, Trish Morse, and one more person. I can't remember. Was it Mary? No, it wasn't Mary. No, it wasn't you, Mary. I can't remember who the other person was, but it was definitely George and Trish. And oh no, it was Ralph Dormitzer was the third person. And they studied this up and down and all ways. And that's what they came back with.
Don, as estimable a group of people as that is, it does seem to have been a long time since that analysis has been run. And, there may be between, certainly not for this budget now. Other members of the committee may have other opinions, but it seems to be a good, tight, well put together, workable component to the town's budget. But that is the number that's a little bit eye-popping. That may be something that ought to be revisited just as a check, not as a not that there's anything wrong with it, but periodically, I don't know. Chris, what do you think, or Don?
I agree. I think we should look at it, or at least look at it again. But we did try to increase this line item a couple of years ago. Well, I think last year, pandemic came around, we had to cut back on a bunch of our revenue estimates and be a little bit more in line. We're still continuing with that adjustment in revenue estimates. So, again, trying to add almost 200 grand to a one department really kills the whole town side budget. So trying to make that jump right this second just didn't work out at this point.
It was budgeted at 300,000 a couple of years ago, so it is up.
It is, but I think that there's something. This is a lay person rather than an accountant, but where you do the basic calculation, and as surely as anything that the number is going to be X, and the budget line is 0.9X. That doesn't seem right to me. Not that anybody's doing anything wrong. It's just that recognizing the entire, virtually guaranteed liability would be, I assume we reconcile that at the end of the year with what, the application of free cash or
reserve fund transfer. So essentially, and that's what we've been kind of relying on. Yeah. Could we get it within the budget now? We'd have to probably reduce reserve fund, reduce some other lines. Yeah. We still budget conservatively overall with all our departments, but to try to make that up in just one line item.
I'm not suggesting, I'm just trying to understand it. And maybe there's a lot.
That's kind of been our take, I guess, on the last few years. Go ahead, Chris.
If I could just add on to, so when Bill did all those estimates, he put it all at sick time. Now, everybody doesn't use every sick day, right? We have a sick leave bank, sick leave bonus bank. There's incentives to lower some of those. The training days are locked in, right? Most people take all their vacation, but they don't have to. We actually have a vacation buyback, I think, if people can use it. And we do have a sick leave incentive bank. So there's ways we try to, bring that number down. And there are, that said, Bill's looking at what he needs to, the worst case scenario, right? If everybody takes every day, this is what happens.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so that said, it's probably a conversation after this cycle, again, because, times have changed and it's worth taking a look at. The other thing, and that may be a broader conversation than just, do we have more bodies? Do we change the bodies we have and move them around a little bit? But I think it's worth having that conversation, but I think it's probably best served after we finish this cycle and maybe put a few.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And also with some of those interesting ideas, you need to be very careful about collective bargaining obligations. But
by the way, Gene mentioned before about specialty. One of the challenges we have in the civil service system is we can't even look at that stuff, right? We may have a candidate who checks every box, but they're number 26 on the list. So civil service has been a tremendous constraint in our ability to diversify the skill set. Not that we don't have a great department. I want to be clear about this. We have a great department. That said, it took years to get another female officer because civil service didn't acknowledge that it was an important attribute. Now, I think all of us today would acknowledge that having women officers, female officers are an important attribute for a lot of reasons. One, because they can, if you have certain people who've been abused or whatever, it's the most natural, way to work with. And it's not like we're making this up. This is like, standard process all over the country. That's another issue though, I'm just bringing it up only because
sure.
We talked about this, and I have to give both the credit for getting us to having Julie on the force, right? It took a long time and she's been great. And by the way, Greg and Mike do a great job with all that they do every day. And we have a great talented group of staff. That said, it would be great if we could prioritize some of these issues and allow a little more diversification of skill set. But civil service just doesn't recognize that that's a value.
We have a couple of minutes left. I want to try and stay on schedule, but I want to make sure everybody gets their questions in. Mary, I thought I saw your hand for a moment.
Yeah, and it might be worth looking at after this budget cycle, what a town, I'm thinking like Norwell does or something like this with their overtime. I'm just curious to see how other towns are approaching it, because we can't be unique in this situation.
No, we staff a little bit less. We do have less people than some of these other towns. But
Okay.
they still have overtime, that's for sure, but just not as much.
Okay, Lee?
Just real quick, this problem's been going on for 20 or 25 years, as far as I can remember, before I was even here, moved to the town. This is nothing new. They tried all different ways to try to solve the problem, and it doesn't seem to be solvable.
All right. Okay. Well, Chief, Lieutenants, thanks for coming. We really appreciate the presentation. Was exactly what we needed. Thanks for another good year, challenging year, and good luck moving forward. Unless anybody has anything further, we are right on schedule to move to the IT budget.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Rob, at 8:25, I have to see an emergency patient. Okay.
Okay. If
you still have form.
Do you have any topics that you would like us to cover if you've got to drop off?
You're covering him well tonight, and
okay.
I will get Mary's or Jean's impeccable notes, or whoever's doing the notes.
Very good. Thanks for letting me know, Helene, so you didn't just drop off and we all need to be, what did we say? But Jean, you'll have the minutes reflect her departure. Yeah. So
I'm just trying to keep the police chief's job easier by handling some of these late night emergencies.
Well, thank you for your service. Okay, then Ron, you're up for the IT. Oh, Chris, I see your hand.
No, this is just Chris as the AV guy. Ron, you've been made co-host. You can share your screen if you'd like. If you'd rather, I do have the screen that you asked me to share. I have it here.
Okay, when I get to that, I'll share it, Chris. That's fine. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It's nice seeing you once again. I think we do this annually, and there's so many of you that are new faces to me, and I'm sure I'm a new face to many of you. What I'd like to do is just start with a little bit of 2-minute history of what the IT department is set up to do with regards to the budgets. So in Cohasset, we have 3 IT budgets. We have a central infrastructure budget, which is a shared budget or a shared resource for the entire town. It interacts with approximately 16 to 20 different departments and/or boards and committees, and we support schools, police, fire, everybody. So that budget is primarily to support the infrastructure, the common service delivery platform that we have for the entire town. That's budget 155. And if you look at the documents that Dawn shared this year, you'll see that that budget had a minimal increase of about 0.6%. We are achieving a level service budget with that small increase. And I suspect that we will be in good shape this time next year as well. The other budget is the municipal software budget. And I say municipal software budget because the budget is primarily funding municipal applications across the town. It's budget 156, it has approximately 32 to 33 different software solutions tied to it. It has some hardware support. There may be some training in it, I believe, this year. That budget saw about a 2% increase this year, or about $3,000, I believe. Again, a nominal increase for a level service budget, and I think we'll be in good shape this time next year on that budget as well. The third budget is a school budget, and essentially that's a technology budget with about 16 different line items in it. Unfortunately, only about 7 of those line items are for IT, at least back-end IT, which is what we do. This year, the schools did something unique in that they brought in a technical director of curriculum, and they assigned some of the line items to that individual to manage. So the technology budget on the school side, some 16 lines, are broken out based on front-end curriculum use and back-end infrastructure and/or break-fix technical support. So that's kind of how the budgets are broken out. They all interact and feed off of one another. There has been a shift this year with regards to some of the services. Training, for example, was in the central infrastructure budget, and I believe it was $10,000 last year. This year, you'll see that line item is zeroed out. And that's because we decided that it would be more beneficial to apply some amount of training on the school's budget as well as the municipal software budget. Just to give you a little background on the personnel are comprised of myself, the deputy, myself, the CIO, Dan Kelly, the new deputy CIO. We had our past CIO, Bart Riley, retire in June. Dan has done a phenomenal job of picking up the reins and running with it. I can't speak highly enough about him. His dedication, his expertise is second to none. Really, really, really proud of him and really happy to work with him. We are paid out of the central infrastructure budget, 155. On the school side, the school also picks up some salaries. They pick up the salaries of the systems administrator, the database administrator, and a technical support specialist. Those positions are primarily on the back end of supporting the infrastructure. However, the technical support specialist does in fact work on the front end with our help desk solution and is in the classrooms and in different departments day in and day out. Our database administrator is primarily tied to the Student Information System, or ASPIN. And she is also shared as my IT admin as well, giving me approximately 10 hours a week doing vendor management and invoicing POs, that type of thing as well. So she's a very important person to me. 2020 was a very challenging year. I'm sure it was for everybody. Well, IT was no different. We were asked to do some things to try to manage a pandemic. And from my perspective, I think we did a pretty good job of keeping people working, services to constituents working. And I think we did it well within the budget, albeit with some help from CARES Act funds and those types of things. The budgets themselves, if you want, I don't know if you want to dive into the individual budgets, 156 and 155.
In a highlights sort of manner, yes, but not line by line.
All right,
not dive so much as maybe wade.
Okay. Well, there's really only a couple of line items that I'll touch on very briefly, and again, they are in the 156 budget, the municipal budget. You know, there are one line item for IT education and training, and again, I had mentioned that that was initially funded in the 155 central infrastructure budget. We decided to split that with the schools and move some into both the school IT budget as well as the municipal budget. It's logical in that it supplies Dan and/or myself with some funding directly on the municipal side, but it also gives the schools some direct allocation towards their own personnel for funding for specific technologies that we need to train them on. So that was just a logical move. Let's see if there's anything else on 156. really 156 with a 2% increase, $150,885 is the budget. There's really not much to say about it other than what I've already mentioned at this point. Again, some shifts in reclassifications for different solutions and services, but all in all, it's remaining pretty stable and pretty much the same as what it was last year. The 155 budget, again, central infrastructure budget, is a budget that is for our telephony systems, our fiber networks, our servers, our switching gear, all that infrastructure that is used across the entire town. That budget saw a decrease in training. Once again, we removed that from there. And we saw an increase in the hardware support. We anticipate seeing some additional break fix requirements. We expect to see some service level agreements to tweak up a little bit as far as cost goes. So we decided that the hardware support line would go from 22,000 to 36,000 this year. The CTO security services, that's, you may have saw a Word document that I sent out that showed some initiatives and some of the highlights of 2020 and going into 2021. Some of those were, changing backup and recovery solutions, the pandemic management and the technologies that were associated with that. But another one that is ongoing and increasing every single year is our spend on security initiatives. And so we had to increase the licensing necessary to fully leverage a Microsoft 365 licensing tier 3 product that we've adopted. That gives us some substantial cybersecurity insight and analytics and metrics. And it's a powerful tool. It's approximately about $8,000 in additional licensing this year. And to be honest, that was really to finish off covering a small portion of the fire department and all of you, all of our boards and committee members that run on Office 365. So that was a very important thing. It's a critical project that we have going on. And it's something that we'll build off of as future years come through. What I'd like to do, if I could, is just share my screen and just show you a quick graphic.
Chris, IT needs help.
There might be something to that. It is now, what, 8 o'clock?
Yeah, you have the power. What do you need me to show if you can't?
Just that graphic that I sent you, Chris.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay, got it.
So in 2020, this is our help desk pie chart. We have approximately, I think it's 22, 23 different categories that we break out our help desk system based on the technician or the individual who's working on these things. They may be assigned any one of these depending on the skill set that they're familiar with. Reason I'm showing you this is that last year we had 3,000 help desk requests for approximately 5 people. That was about 1,000 more than the previous year, and to a great degree that was pandemic based. Only a small percentage, a very small percent, maybe 1 or 2% of this overall 3,000 requests were actually sent out to a third-party vendor, and it's typically tied to our telephony vendor. They help us out with making tweaks to the phone system at times. We spun up a pandemic call center this year. There were a number of things that we didn't have the capacity to do with everything we had going on, so we leveraged that vendor in those particular ways. This is essentially a great way for me to see where our resources need to be spent, where our training needs to be tweaked and or offered. It's a great graphic. Like I said, we try to break this down further with other types of graphs and stuff to see, how much money we're spending in a particular area. But essentially, I just wanted to make you aware that, we are looking at these reports And it's an important report that we look at to try to make sure that all of our systems and all of our help desk are being captured so that we can report and look at the analytics and the metrics to make decisions, both funding and from a labor perspective. That was pretty much my overview. Questions?
So I'm embarrassed to say, which one of us had IT as a liaison assignment, if anyone?
I don't know, Rob.
I don't know either. Sorry.
Mary.
I have, well,
we may have overlooked you, but I think I'll just, I particularly for, I'll just, throw it out to the group for questions. Anybody? I saw Jean's hand first.
Ron, thanks for the presentation. I had two sort of general questions, one of which was based on the summary that you sent us earlier. So the first one is with respect to the town's website, is that included in this budget, including any updates that are done, or is that somewhere else? I'm just wondering about the spend on the town's website for like upgrades, or is that maybe subsumed within a salary?
The website is part of our hosting line. It's under budget 156. I think we allocated about $8,000 or $9,000 for that. That was inclusive of the police site, the Civic Plus Municipal site, and I believe there might have been one other website. That's all inclusive of all of the technical support that we need to help manage that site. We have a number of in-house admins that help us post information. And we'll tell you that that site is currently being looked at. We have a free refresh coming up. So we have we have developed a team of about 5 or 6 individuals to help us look at what we want to do with that site, what the constituents need, how we can dress it up, how we can offer services, a number of factors. So that's something that we're actively looking at rolling out in the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay, oh, that's great to know. And then my second question was, and you referenced this in your summary, ransom attacks, which are like the death knell for any town. So I'm wondering, is that included in the security services line item that you were just referring to? And, just given the importance of ransomware attacks, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
So, obviously the biggest thing you need when it comes to fighting ransomware is a good backup. Even if they encrypt your files, if you've got a good backup to pull them back from, you're in good shape. So our systems analyst is tasked with testing those backups twice a month. That's the biggest thing we can do to fight ransomware, with the exception of cybersecurity. The cybersecurity initiative includes a number of different platforms. One of the platforms we stood up recently was something called Barracuda Essentials. So essentially it's a filter with some artificial intelligence, which evaluates emails as they come through and starts to understand patterns and such, and starts to actually block emails that it identifies as being, potentially ransomware or viruses or malware. So that's one solution that we've spun up. The Microsoft 365 Tier 3 solution is another component that gives us a tiered fabric of security. But I think the biggest thing that we do is really the training of our staff. And I don't know if Chris had mentioned it, but we just received a cybersecurity grant from the state. And in fact, you may have received an email from me recently, right? Encouraging you to take that training or be part of that. That is the biggest thing we can do to really protect our data and our systems. And training our end users across the board is just instrumental in coming to that end.
And then if I could just piggyback on that for just one quick second. So when the current administration started their community compacts, the very first things we did were IT, and we did some early cybersecurity work 5 years ago to get ahead, and there was early training for staff then, and upgrades, and that led us down the path to where we are with better software, and we continue to seek those grants, and this was the most recent one, and it provides a whole training platform, which again we're pushing out as well to all of you folks and folks that are active on the site in our cyber world here because of your activity on committees. And we're, because I got to tell you, the stuff I learned when we went through this training a couple of years ago, I don't think I want to open emails ever again. I mean, it's frightening what the heck's going on, right? That said, we have made a lot of quiet but well thought out, as what Ron said, upgrades to the platform itself.
We have leveraged the state grants in the past, as Chris had mentioned. We've actually had security audits where we've had them come in and look at our network, our website, servers, everything. And so it gave us some good information. We are partnered with CIS, which is, they have components where they'll actually monitor certain aspects of your site and notify you of any issues that may be tied to code or something like that you need to correct. So it's a pretty powerful.
I would just add in one last point. My agency will pretend to attack its employees to see how we respond. And it's very scary, but very effective. And I'll just leave it at that.
And we did that too, by the way. And do you want to tell us there? So one of our cyber, I should have bet. We had a staff member who was actually very active. That's not on Ron's staff. Got caught in a phishing thing. And he should have known, but he was so embarrassed when that happened. And it was like a fake email from HR, right? And so we've done that. And so I'm like, if Ron sends me an email, I'm like, is this real? You know?
No. Mary, did I see your hand?
Yes, just two quick questions. Can you explain to me a little bit, Ron, first of all, thank you for everything you did this last year in your department. Oh my God. You must just be ready for everybody to go back in the classroom in their office, for goodness sakes. But a little bit more about the Director of Technology and Curriculum role in the schools and how that role interfaces with you. Does that individual roll up to you, or are they part of your office? Are they just in the schools? How does that work?
So that position reports directly to Pat, the superintendent.
Yep.
Lisa Radin is her name. She resides in the central office.
Okay.
Her primary role is to ensure that the school's technology is where it needs to be with regards to strategic planning. She's in the classroom and or through Zoom sessions, teaching and giving personal development, professional development to many staff. She evaluates, I know she's working with capital budget now, she's evaluating what a pilot classroom will look like in the future. So she's looking to solicit and or acquire some amount of funding to create, I think it's 4 or 6 pilot classrooms.
Yeah, I did see that presentation in front of Capitol. Yes.
Yeah. So she's doing that. She's in the classroom. She's really about PD and teachers. She does have an interface with our with the IT department. We're looked at more now as an infrastructure, even though our technical support specialist is in the classroom supporting laptops and Chromebooks and software and all of those things. So we're still doing all of that. I think Lisa's role right now is more of a director and more trying to bring up, you know, the expertise of the teachers and the staff at this point.
Was that a role, Chris, that was put in prior to the world exploding, or was that as a result of?
Yeah, I know that the schools, and again, I don't know if this happened when you were on the committee or not, Mary. There was a woman hired at the elementary level. Is she still there, Ron? Is it
Cassie O'Brien, technologist?
Yeah.
And in ongoing conversations, there was talking about having maybe someone like her mirrored at the high school, middle school level. After COVID hit, and there was stimulus money, they made a decision to hire someone. One of the things we just want to ensure as we go forward, and again, it's really up to all of you collectively as the town. It's just we created we're small enough, right? The town is too small to have all these little silos, right? So we created from basically nothing a townwide IT system which provides deliverables. Now, we have police and fire and all that budgeted on the town side, and we have skills on that, and we have the Aspen and all that stuff budgeted on the school side. But all of our central, the phone system is one unified system.
Mm-hmm.
The system is one unified system, and there's different emails, right, and stuff. That said, we've leveraging one, we built a fiber loop so the town has its own fiber connectivity, so we don't have to pay Verizon every month to use the fiber. that runs our phones and it runs our IT. It was a conscious decision the town made. We hired the right person in Ron, and the team he's built has really made a big difference. And the schools are clearly evolving, I think, Mary, with their need for training and staff development. I do have concerns that it becomes a supplement and not a replacement, right? I don't. It would not be my recommendation that we silo out the schools as a separate IT world. I just don't. I mean, there's separate school IT issues. There's no question. There's separate training issues and all that. That said, I think having one unified back office makes us safer and it's less expensive and it's more effective because we're too small to have two IT directors. It's just silly. I think it's silly. I mean, okay. I get lead me up all the time about salaries and stuff. I mean, I don't think he's not gonna be telling me to hire more IT directors. I mean, so and that's the only. That's again, I don't want to say that's a problem per se, because we've had conversations about this.
Okay, well, it might just be something to pay attention to. That's all. And the other question I had for you, Ron, is there's a note in here in terms of hardware purchases. It's a 6-year replacement schedule. Is that just for the town computers? Does that include the school? Where are we with the Chromebooks in the school and that replacement cycle and everything? And are you comfortable with all those numbers?
So the 5 to 7 year replacement schedule was primarily tied to staff devices, and those staff devices were townwide. So it was
okay. So that's
all school. When I say all school, I mean all school with regards to staff devices. The Chromebooks were different. The iPads were different. Those were actually leased out years ago as part of the digital learning recommendation committee's recommendation. So those I've actually gone to capital or suggested to Pat that he needed to move forward within capital request for, I believe it was 545 new Chromebooks, whether that be a lease or a buyout. I think we were suggesting a lease, but essentially those Chromebooks will have had approximately 5 to 6 years of life in them when we retire them. So they've treated us well with the exception of a few issues, but essentially the Chromebooks and the student devices are separate from our 5 to 7 year device replacement schedule that we have on the staff side.
Okay, and the staff then, just to be clear, encompasses all town employees, which would be the school side, just all town employees. Okay, thank you.
And I believe we raised that in 155, we had 25,000 last year, or potentially, I think it actually went down last year. I think it was about 10 or 15. And so we brought that back up to, I believe, 31 this year, just so that we could make sure that we were able to capture that 5 to 7 year device replacement schedule.
And are those leased or are those purchased?
Those are purchases.
Okay.
Lee?
Real quick, Ron, I just wanted to ask you, could you refresh my recollection of what happened? After we hired you, how did your department go from, I think, yourself to 5 people?
I got lucky. I think that was the first task that I was responsible for, and that was to actually outfit, an IT department that could meet the needs of all of the infrastructure and all of the systems that we had. As Chris had mentioned, they were siloed all over the place. We had consultants or contractors in, doing this, that, or the other thing, and there was no cohesive approach to anything. So by building the infrastructure that we did with phone systems and fiber backbones and firewalls and all of that stuff, it was then necessary to make sure that we brought in individuals with a skill set that could meet those needs. And we've done a really good job with the 5 of us, considering the amount of infrastructure we support and, the student information systems, which eats up the majority of our database administrative time. Everybody is wearing a lot of hats every single day is what it comes down to. And we have a great deal of depth and bench. So we support one another really well. And I think our response times and our clear times are pretty good considering.
That means we have two of you work for the town and 3 work for the school. Is that correct?
Well, they all answer to me, but yes, they are paid from different salary line items.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I got just one observation, and then we're still pretty much on time to move to the next sets of budgets. And that was, you had said something about, I made a note here someplace, I think in response to a question from Mary, a position that was grant funded recently. Did I hear that? Did I mishear that?
I think Chris had mentioned that the new technical, the director of technology and curriculum at the schools was funded partially through a grant. Yes.
Okay. I brought this up at our last meeting. You know, at some point after we're done with town meeting, maybe we have a meeting to talk about sort of trends generally in budgeting, but it seems that there are conversations that start with, we got a grant, let's fund a position, and then the grant goes away and we still have the position, which is fine. But in terms of forecasting, you know, the permanent expense of a new position, the grant funding seems to be the teaser rate on the mortgage, and it's okay, but I think that it ought to be a transaction that's entered into with eyes open. So that's a conversation for another day. Ron, thanks again. I don't have kids in the schools, but I do a lot of work with a lot of school districts. I know that the strain of remote learning on the technology people has been extraordinary, and I only ever heard that Cohasset was killing it. So, you know, thanks from a disinterested resident, and thanks for your, I mean, your budget's clean, and you know it's high performing, and we really appreciate all the work. And I got your email about taking the class, and I warrant that I will. So I think we're good. I think we can move on to the next item and let you go. So thanks a lot.
I appreciate it, and enjoy your night, everyone. Take care.
That's nice. He asked us to enjoy our night. All right, the item, we're a hair behind, but I think that was useful. The other financial articles and recurring articles. So that's kind of a broadly phrased topic that probably just barely keeps us within the open meeting law. But Chris, why don't you walk us through what we need to know? I think probably we should talk about setting up some, at our next meeting, setting up some votes on the layups, the recurring stuff, the things that are easy, or anything we're finished, so that we're not trying to cram things into the end. So Chris, with that, go ahead.
Okay, so there's the draft one is 30 articles, and I have to get you a fresher version. Again, we're in the time of year now where it changes a fair amount. So I'd say that, by the way, the biggest things that still need to be kind of chewed on are those sewer and water rate proposed increases. So if you folks want to, you know, get those folks back in front of you, that it might be something to think about scheduling, Rob. So I think that's going to be tackled by you folks before it gets back to the select board. And I know that sewer did meet this week, and I mean, water's ready. I mean, you heard the water presentation. If there's more questions, I would recommend scheduling that fairly soon if you want to. So.
Okay. Let me. Mary had circulated a schedule, just one of the 27 documents I've opened on my desktop. There it is. So we have town hall, and there's a VOTEC article on.
They have I have to confirm with Tom, whose last name is now fled my mind, who's the superintendent over at the Central VOTEC, about being able to come next week for sure. And I guess based on where we are you ready to have the town hall presentation next week? So
are they ready to give it next week?
Well, I mean, they're ready to give the presentation they have.
Yeah.
If I could just interject.
Mary, yeah, what do you think of that?
I did send to Phil just our basic broad snap sheet form, so they knew the kinds of things we would be interested in, that we didn't necessarily need a PowerPoint of the design and layout of the building. Although that's very nice, but that's not what we're here to talk about so much. And also it would be good just to reference where they might receive sources of funding, how this is different from the last go round, you know, things like that. So they are they are expecting next Tuesday to have information back from the architects and engineers, and feel like they would be ready to come before us on Thursday. So, I mean,
well, we have to hear them sooner or later. We may as well keep them on for the 25th.
And so sewer did meet this week. Water has a meeting on Tuesday as well. And I think those two conversations might end up being a little bit longer. So we just want to make sure we have enough time, whatever evening we have them come in.
We have an open date on the 1st. And that feels like probably the right place to put water and sewer, because I get the sense that their articles are going to be much, you know, one of the features at town meeting. And, you know, we should give them a kind of, you know, take a, well, probably the least possible, the least attractive possible analogy would be taking a deep dive. But why don't we put water and sewer on for the 1st? Yes? No? You think? All right. Chris, you got that? You want to?
Yep. So with that reviewed, and then again, if you, I'll see if I can confirm Tom's appearance for you next week.
That's April 1st, then, Rob, right?
Yes.
Yeah. April Fool's Day. So if we can't do the 25th, maybe come in on the 1st. So there are going to be. So we do have some unpaid bills, I'm afraid. You know, we've got a real nice string without having them, but we did this year. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them.
What kind of money are we talking about?
It's all fairly short money. The largest one is $6,000, and that had to do with a bill that Hull never sent us for some reason for the animal control officer. We have a shared animal control officer, and that may have just been a pandemic thing. That,
I mean, unless, you know, I mean, we should consider them, and if it's an article, we need to vote on it, but I don't think it needs a ton of attention unless there's a real problem. You know, it's a vendor who's terrible, but, you know, as somebody who gets bills paid by municipalities, you're never going to find me saying, let's not pay a vendor bill. So,
right. So there's 4 of them. There's another one that has to be added. That actually has to do with the breaking of Deutsche Williams. There was a bill lingering from 3 years ago that got lost in the shuffle. So,
I have to, don't say though, that would probably affect me personally. So I'm going to have to recuse myself a lot.
And I'm letting you know in advance. 4 of these you can look at, but the 5th one you may have to recuse yourself. So
fair enough. Well, I mean, stiffing the town of Hull, very attractive, kind of theoretically, but we probably shouldn't do that. They'll just be able to get back at us some other day.
And there's again, a couple of these other, they're very small. I don't know what, again, last year was just a weird year. And I think the pandemic, I think some things slipped a little bit that should not have otherwise.
Yeah.
You can see one of these is for $173.66 for some materials bought from a ceiling company. You know, we usually, again, it was a very unusual year. So that'll be something I'm going to run by the select board on Tuesday, and then you folks on Thursday, and then hopefully back to select board for final approval the following. Supplemental appropriations is really only one, and that's to release money for 143 TV. The way it works now is that it has to run through the budget before it runs into them. And because we didn't do a special this year, they're a little behind again, so they like their money. So,
well, they have a payroll, so they need.
They have money in reserve, to be clear. That said, so they're not going to run out of money, literal cash. That said, this is owed to them, and we should pay them. So, and Don's going to have a better updated number by that time. So, and we're also looking at a different way to possibly set them up as a. So I don't think that's going to hit town meeting this year, but it might hit in the fall. Stabilization. Now, by the way, I was working on a way to structure these a little bit differently. I don't think we're going to. I don't think we're going to do a special in the annual. I think we're going to just do an annual. That said, in the annual, we can have dates that apply right now, before July 1, I should say, because of the availability of money. For example, a lot of these transfers the money's available for free cash. We never had a full time meeting, right? So we didn't allocate the free cash. So some of these would be triggered as of June 1st or May 25th. And then, and these are the stabilization distributions. And then there's the annual spending limits. This is a very routine article. This can actually be changed during the year, but the Municipal Modernization Act require, and these are in the bylaws, by the way, they require an affirmation every year of the spending limits, and these have not changed. In fact, it's funny, we set up the library patron printing account. I don't think there's anything in it because there haven't been any library patrons printing since last year. And this only got set up as of July 1. So I'm expecting the balance in there is zero or something very low. One-time cost, again, Don and I have to chew on this a little bit more and come back. But, you know, there's things in here like putting aside money for potential contract settlements that we need to have. We set aside money for facilities every year. I think that's another good idea. There's some funds we'd like to have available to retrofit the building, the old highway building that was the rec center for a while, and it's going to be rebranded in the fall as a youth center, though the name is still to be determined. We need a little some funding for that. A tennis court study that was going to come in front of everyone last year to look at expanding tennis. That we didn't do it because it was done at the appropriate time, but it's back. The annual movement of the Waterways Fund, and then there's numbers that we haven't budgeted, like consulting services, you know, planning, other things. We set aside a number last year. It's in an article, and when we use the money, we go to the select board and say, hey, we're going to use the money for this or this. We've put some into harbor. There was a little bit of money for economic development consulting. There's some money for some other things that have come up. And one of the things I like to build into the town manager budget is something called just a contingency line. You know, we might have a small match on a grant or something, or just to have a little flexibility. And because we're getting kind of lean this year, we didn't put it in there. So things you'll see next week, but you'll see in advance of next week. Then there's just 91 liability for next week, and the additional real estate exemptions. These are just annual renewal articles. There's really nothing big or different about them. And then, of course, there's also the first two, but you don't have to opine on them. That's the annual report and the reports of committees, should there be any this year. Those are just annual articles. We don't really have anyone. There's really no vote to have on those. So.
And why don't we do this, Chris, in preparation? I'll try and remember to put it on the agenda, but in preparation for the meeting next week, that we have a list of the easy stuff to vote on, and we'll go through it.
With the articles, the specific, you'll have a copy of the warrant, and you'll have the specific articles.
Yeah, and we'll just bang through them real quick. Obviously, if anybody looks at those and thinks there's something that needs a hold, let me know, and Mary, and we'll put a hold on it. And if need be, we'll take it up at a later meeting. But anything that's truly routine, and there are plenty of them that are, we can get through real quick. And then we'll have the encouraging event of having some check marks on our list, and that's always good.
Is there any, let me just ask Don here, is there any rescission of unused borrowing plan for this year? If there's not, we can just pull it off. Okay, then we're going to pull that up. So look, we just dropped
better.
We just cleaned it up last year. We don't have any new borrowing or anything out there right now that needs to be rescinded. So we're good.
That's just something that's on here, which it's a good business practice to do that from time to time. I still have to follow up with AEC is coming in front of the select board next week to find out if they want to pursue this lease of property at the water department, and they'll come to in front of you for solar arrays. And I think the rest of them are really all zoning articles. There are no citizens, as you already heard. So that's
we did hear that. We have a zoning night planned. I think it's going to come down to two articles that require any attention. 4 or 5 of them we voted on last year. They just got scratched from the agenda to keep it, you know, as thin as it could be, or from the warrant last year. A couple of others have been withdrawn. So there are 2 of them that, you know, then they'll come in and make a presentation. They'll give us materials ahead of time, which will, and by will, I mean Mary, will circulate to the committee. And, you know, those are, you know, they're important and they deserve our full attention. So that'll be the 8th. So the water and sewer on the 1st, zoning on the 8th, and we can pack in some of the routine stuff on the 25th and the 1st and the 8th, just to make sure we're staying up on things. Bear in mind, we also have joint sessions with capital budget on the 30th and CPC on the 30th. We will remember to send out a notice of post both of those meetings. And we have, Mary or Chris, the schedule doesn't reflect it, but we had a placeholder meeting on April 15 scheduled as a, just in case we're not done. So I think it's, it'd be nice to not have to do it because we're terribly efficient, but it's there if we need it. So
just to update you, the CPC actually has banged out 6 projects so far. They've given green lights to 6 funding requests, and they're going to do another meeting on Monday. So I think they're pretty close, actually. And
good.
Budget is ground through really well too. So I'm cautiously optimistic that on the 30th, presentations from both of those. I
hope so, because that's when we want to hear them. So,
and then with the budget, I mean, are there any other departments that you folks want to take a look at, or are you good? I mean, you've seen the biggies. Public safety, DPW, and IT are really where the money, and the shared budgets we've already talked about.
I mean, unless you or Don tell us that there's another department that has some issues that are moving the overall budget dial. I mean, bear in mind that, you know, our process of reviewing these things are to inform our advice on approving the overall budget. So I don't think we need to ferret down on each one, but if anybody wants to ferret on any of them, we should know.
The only other thing to put on your radar screen from a finance point of view is, so maybe next week, so Don's going to present the budget FY21 through February next week to the select board. So maybe we can do that presentation for you folks on Thursday if you want. Just a quick update as where we are financially. And then the only other thing is, well, it's not going to happen next week, but you know, we're still sorting out COVID. And, you know, when I say COVID, I mean the American Rescue Act stuff. We don't know enough to really talk about this yet. Don is probably this more closer than I am. And it's still a very uncertain as to what this all going to be. There's large numbers attached. I couldn't tell you yet what class is getting for sure. I know what the base number is. It's that we've seen. But what it can be spent for and exactly when we get it. The schools have just gotten another couple $100,000 too directly for reopening grants and stuff. So I think you folks, I mean, I'm not telling you to do this, but you've already followed up on this. I'm guessing you're probably going to want to ask us about these things again a little bit deeper. They're not town meeting articles per se, but they're big financial. These are big numbers. These are 6- and 7-digit numbers that are rolling through here. So, you know, maybe
yeah, unprecedented and hopefully non-recurring. But
well, I wouldn't necessarily mind. I mean, as long as there's no virus attached to them, they can give us.
Yeah, they can be. The money can be as recurring as it wants, but it's conditional. So,
right.
Yeah, and then of course we have the joint meeting with the school committee, and I mean, the school budget. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the school budget gets rolled into the budget, and our recommendation is of the entire budget, including school budget. And by statute, the school committee sets the priorities in that budget. Nobody else can say anything, even if they want. Well, they can say anything you want, but you know, that's that is. I know the cases. That's their compartment, and they get to make the allocation decisions. So we should, certainly. Attend that joint meeting and ask sharp questions, but with a realistic expectation of how much they need to care. So I think we're pretty squared away. Mary, was there some other sort of planning topic that we were I'm remembering something, but it's just beyond the reach of my consciousness.
I think it was just really about the town hall project, but we have pretty much covered that, I think.
Right.
And whenever, so I'll make sure Phil Lear is the chair of the town hall committee. So whenever we get their material back, I'll just make sure I distribute it to the committee if folks aren't really aware. And Fran is also a liaison with me, so everybody can see what they put forward.
I see we have it down on my calendar on the 25th to talk about that.
We do.
Yeah, they're coming forward, but
Okay.
I did ask them when I popped into their meeting on Tuesday. They asked what they could do to prepare because they were a little caught off guard when they went to capital budget last week. So I basically asked the kind of questions we ask and answer, and they said, wouldn't it be that great if we could answer them before you even ask them? And I said, well, that would be so wonderful. So why don't we do it that way?
Yeah. So I think we should probably, you know, I mean, we'll talk about that as we go into the meeting, but something we want to think about is, you know, whether and to what extent, you know, how granular our role is in that. I wasn't at the capital budget meeting, but I know that, or I have the perception that that is a committee that has a tendency to get very, very, very granular, whether or not it's within their remit or not. They tend to get down to very detailed sorts of questions. I mean, we certainly want to ask good questions and preview the kinds of questions that the committee should be prepared for at town meeting, and also to educate ourselves to make a recommendation on what that committee proposes to do. But, you know, we want to think about making sure that we stay, you know, in our, I mean, we can stray out of our lane a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be a design charrette. I have some particular questions about some of the internals of the design, but I'm planning to ask those offline. But I think the question in front of us, the narrow question, is a warrant article for several $100,000 in prep and planning money up through bidding. But necessarily, I think we need to reach a conclusion whether, as a committee, we back the overall project, because I don't want to spend big dollars on design for a project that's going nowhere. I think, Mary, you articulated that much better than I did. But this is all by way of preview. We can't deliberate it. It's not on our agenda. Jean?
Hey, Rob and Mary, if we have questions, not granular, but, you know, big picture questions, should we forward them to you, just so, you know, that committee can think about them ahead of time?
So long as we're not engaging in, yeah, that wouldn't be deliberative. I think that would be something that we can provide that committee to be prepared for.
Okay.
So if you sent them as, these are topics on which I would like to be informed, mm-hmm. and we pass that along to the committee, you know, in summary, A, it makes our meeting more efficient. But B, if we do it right, and that is you to Mary and I and say Chris, and then off, we also have the added bonus of not violating the open meeting law, which.
Yeah, I just want to be careful about that. I mean, I'm happy to.
No,
I'm thinking right now, but I don't want to take additional time either.
Yeah, no, I think that's okay, Chris. Do you see anything? If a member has topics that they wish to have covered, please address X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's fine. I mean, you're not deliberating, saying, "Look, we want to talk about this."
Yeah, neither as a group nor serially. So, okay, yeah, please do, because anything that keeps them, I want to be able to tell them, or it'll be Mary and Fran, tell them, look, you know, you're going to come into the advisory committee looking to get our recommendation for this warrant article. Here are the check boxes that the members have identified. We really don't need, I would prefer not to have the whole presentation, just because, you know, it could be tons of time. So they'll give us their stuff on paper and they'll summarize it, and we can drill down on certain things. But, I think that there are some issues that are, pretty obviously centrally important, and then sort of the arrangement of the deck chairs is stuff that maybe can wait, but maybe not. I think there may be some important, well, reasonable minds can differ. There was some discussions I heard recently about a lot of detail, and that's obviously important to some people at this stage, but I think we can do it efficiently and give a sound recommendation.
And Jean, just to answer your question too, in speaking with Phil at their last meeting, he certainly asked if they could have any questions. We can't engage in any kind of email dialogue back and forth, but just so they have the information, they can come speak to that a little more specifically. So,
sure. Great. Okay, thanks.
I'm sorry, Lee.
Yeah, for Dawn, I'd just like to know, I think I might have forgotten, what was our free cash last year? The free cash we're using now, what was the total free cash?
2.3 million.
How much?
2.3 million.
Let's remember, Lee, that there was a lot of reimbursements we got for COVID expenses, things like that were unanticipated. And we also had lower, the schools were physically shut down for months. I mean, there was still staff working, right? But there were a lot of expenses that were not last year and the last 3 or 4 months, which was good. I mean, it's good. It was fine.
So. Yeah, this sounds like a big number. As Chris just mentioned, there were circumstances that resulted in that larger number. Let's remember that our financial policy state the minimum we should be generating in free cash is 3%. We want to be generating 3 to 4%. That minimum is about almost 1.5 million, 1.4 and a half. But yeah, we're a little bit, we've exceeded that for this year. Again, we had a number of grants that funded some of our expenses, which caused that. We had turnbacks in health insurance as we've designed. So yeah, we've had 1 year that's an anomaly, but I just wanted to make that point.
Okay. So, gosh, we're ahead of time. Let's, does anybody else have anything else on the upcoming? I think we've got it. Mary?
Just a quick question. So, Chris will receive a copy of the draft warrant, right?
That's the plan.
Okay.
That's the plan. I will have Tracy send something out or probably early in the week on Monday. And then if there's any tweaks to the articles the select board may make on some of these financial things, I'll send them to you Wednesday for the Thursday meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Fran?
Just a quick change of subject. Chris, what's the plan for the town meeting location? Have anything come up yet?
Yeah, so I talked to Dan Evans, the moderator, about this a couple of weeks ago. We're going to do it on school grounds. The plan is to, if we can, to do it indoors in the gymnasium. We're hoping that by that time, numbers of town residents will have been vaccinated. And somebody it's funny, I've heard this from multiple people. People keep saying, well, all the people who attend are going to be vaccinated anyway. I mean, they're presuming that everyone is 65 and older, right? So who's going to be, I'm like, well, I said lots of people who are not 65 that attend town meeting. So the goal is to go indoors, and I think that's what we're shooting for. If for some reason that's not possible, we're planning alternatively to go on the football field, to go outside, use the bleachers, be outside, all of that. So, which is, a little bit weather dependent. If everyone's seen, the governor's opened up, vaccinations for everybody in about 2 weeks. So, over the next couple of weeks, it ramps right up. So you get to April 12th, I think, and anyone can sign up.
Well, I was thinking we only use about half the gym anyway. We could spread the chairs out.
We could, if we just spread out, socially distance internally. Again, I think masks will be required no matter what a meeting. And we have purifying devices we'll put in the gym and all that. I think that we can easily put several hundred people in there pretty comfortably and spread out. And if people want to sit in the bleachers, we can do that too. I mean, there's definitely, it's a big room. So that's the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Hey,
anything
Rob,
else? Yeah, Jean.
just for the minutes, just to make sure they're accurate. So next week, March 25th, Town Hall project and the routine articles we just talked about, 6 to 15. joint.
And also South Shore VoteTech.
And VoteTech, okay. Remind me the joint committee on the 30th between CPC and capital budget, is that right?
It's the select board, advisory, capital budget, and then the select board, advisory, and CPC. So
okay,
it's two joint meetings, if you will.
Okay. And then sewer and water rate increases April 1st and zoning April 8th.
Right. And then the 15th remains open, but.
And there's a school committee meeting too, right, on the 13th?
Right. Joint session, that's select board, school committee, and us.
Yeah, sorry to torture everyone. I know I've written this list like 30 times.
All right. Speaking of which, our last order of business is approval of minutes, which Jean circulated recently. I assume everybody got it. Does anyone have any comments?
Yeah, Gene, you left my name off. Chris didn't turn me on.
I'm sorry.
I was here at 7 o'clock, but I couldn't get on until 10 after.
yeah. Sorry, I will include you in there. I realized that as soon as I was reading them earlier.
Yes, it's all right.
All right.
I make a motion we approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion?
Wait, who seconded? So I don't have another question mark. Mary? Okay.
So moved and seconded, discussion, hearing none. We vote by roll call. So Fran Collins.
Aye.
Jean Healy.
Aye.
Lee Jenkins.
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick.
Aye.
Meg Wheeler.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, and we're down 2. So that's everybody. So there's nothing reasonably anticipated within 24 hours. So
I have a really quick question.
Sure.
Just a procedure thing. Chris, who goes to water and sewer to let them know we'd like them to come on April 1st? Do you want liaison to do that?
Yeah, I think it would be better if it came for you or Rob formally. Okay. I just formally emailed Tom Hickey, the superintendent, and George Cooney regarding the South Shore VoteTech, and gave them the 25th with the 1st as a fallback if you can't do the 25th.
Okay.
Mary, I'll notify water right now. Give me 3 minutes.
I'm going to go down the hall. I'll send an email as well.
Pin a note to the fridge. Okay. Good. We're 10 minutes early. So
very good.
Yeah.
Bonus tonight.
That's right. I'll take my payment in whatever currency we come up with. But this is good. The departments, they're really just super well prepared. So Chris, thank them for us. I assume everybody agrees. And we'll reconvene. What's next? Well, it's on the schedule. So
23rd.
Great.
Same bat time, same bat channel next week.
Pretty much. Okay. I look forward to it. Have a good week, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To adjourn?
Wait, yeah, we need a